students. Today I have as my special guest Shen Narayanasamy. Shen, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.
So Shen, you're the Executive Director of No Business in Abuse and the Human Rights Campaign Director of GetUp. Can you tell our students what those jobs entail exactly?
So I work on social justice advocacy and campaigning, which means that we get to sit across media, campaigning in its traditional sense. So, you know, working with members of the community, working with the law, doing whatever we want really to try and get the outcome we want.
And how does human rights law actually inform these campaigns?
So No Business in Abuse is a good example. So No Business in Abuse was a corporate campaign set up to target corporates who were involved in mandatory detention. So we used both the solid and the hard human rights law in terms of the United Nations instruments, but we also used soft law, which is there's a whole kind of regime of soft law around business and human rights to inform our analysis of the offshore detention regime and to make an argument to corporations that they shouldn't be involved in it. So it kind of informs what we do, but I think the immigration situation is a pretty good one for also looking at the limitations of the law, because obviously, especially in immigration, the law is set by Parliament and there's a bipartisan consensus at this point in time around offshore detention. So the ability for the law to deliver enduring benefits on its own in immigration is really limited. So what we do is we jump off law or we use law to inform us. So for instance, Let Them Stay, which is one of the campaigns we did, it actually arose out of a failure. You know, the High Court ruled against the lawyers that the 267 people in that case that were in Australia had no legal right to remain here. And so it was a loss, and the campaign started from that loss.
Right. So let's go back a bit. How did you get into law? Did you always want to be a lawyer? Did you always want to study law at uni?
No, I wanted to do something good. I mean, I was quite an idealistic 16-year-old, which is about the age I was back then when I was choosing. And then I read The Justice Game by Geoffrey Robertson and his description of capital punishment and decided I wanted to be a death row lawyer.
Okay.
So I changed my preferences last minute.
You sure did. And can you remember whether or not the stuff you learnt at law school actually holds you in good stead for the work that you do now, or did you actually have to forget a lot of what you learnt at law school to do the job you're doing?
Well, I wasn't the world's most dedicated student, so I think what I learnt at law school was possibly a little limited. What I think it did teach me was a real methodology of thinking. I think the law is really good like that. It teaches you, because you have to cross your I's and dot your T's, and you have to read through a judgment and understand it. And you know, that's kind of before dot points. You know, judgments are often quite rambling beasts. So that way of thinking in long form, but also in a really structured, logical manner, I think was really useful. Because I see that now in campaigning, where I'm really structured and logical about it.
And as a student, you actually went to immigration detention centres, Woomera and Baxter. What impact did that have on you, seeing the conditions in which people were being held and indeed speaking to detainees?
I think, and I think this is something that we don't understand very well about the law and about judges actually, is that seeing the reality of, I don't want to say evil, but the reality of pain and trauma caused by what the state can or can't do is quite shocking. And I think of criminal lawyers who do that a lot. Judges who sit across those cases, and seeing the reality of pain is really quite traumatising. So that burned sufficiently in me that it kind of powered a whole trajectory. But I think it can also burn in other ways. So I think there's a significant amount of burnout and cynicism that can affect you in the law.
Well, you've been campaigning for asylum seeker rights since at least 2000. Some would say that Australia's treatment of asylum seekers hasn't really changed much in that time. How do you personally stay resilient, I guess, in the face of setbacks?
I think you just have to have a dogged commitment. And I think what changes about the 16-year-old is that you start to realise that it's a very long game of chess that you might not complete in your lifetime.
So, Shen, part of your work includes targeting corporations that seem to profit from abuse in detention centres, and also targeting those institutions that invest in those companies that are running detention centres. Do you think that course of action is actually working, is changing the hearts and minds of institutional investors?
Well, I think so. Changing hearts and minds is one thing. And I think what you've got to ask is, did no business and abuse, or is no business and abuse working to achieve the outcome we wanted, which was to see reputable corporations walk away from providing systemic support to detention. And it has done that. So, every single contractor inside detention is pulling out over the next 6-7 months. And this means pulling out from millions of dollars worth of contracts. So in that sense, it is working, and I'm not sure how much it really changed hearts and minds, but it didn't set out to do that. It set out to use a host of soft and hard law to convince companies and their investors of the financial and reputational damage that they would incur should they continue, and that worked.
Okay, so last question. Our students watching this probably deciding which area of law to go into. There'll be many who want to use their law to change the world. What bit of advice or bits of advice would you give students who actually want to use the law for social good, want to actually change the way the law is currently operating in the social justice space?
Well, so the advice that was given to me was really good. So this is not mine, it's what I used. And that was to get really good at what you do. So develop professional skills, because I think what you need to do is know that if you want to work on social justice issues, that often your clients don't have the ability to tell you if you're not doing a good job. And so it's upon you to really make sure that you have the integrity and professional skills to deliver the kind of change you need. So what that meant for me was that the advice I got given is try and do a range of different legal jobs and try and get really practical experience. And I think that's the most important thing. If you want to do social justice law, be good at what you do. Know that if you're going to say to a client, or in a campaign, if you're going to say to a client, I will make sure that you are not sent back to Nauru, you can deliver on that, because you have the most precious kind of responsibility given to anyone, which is the trust and faith of people who have very little.
Well, there you go, students. That's some great advice. Actually be good at what you do. There'll be a whole range of areas of the law that you'll practice in, but your clients need you and you can change the world. Shen, thanks for joining me.
No worries.